Please be advised, all music tracks used in this production are original compositions. Thank you. Hello and welcome to all our listeners and viewers. This is Silas, your e-journalism social work advocate, producer and host of the award-winning Kelsunn-on-the-Air social work podcast, available wherever you get your podcast. Our podcast is rated internationally as one of the best social work podcasts you must follow. This podcast promotes, celebrates, uplifts, and highlights the social work profession. Our aim is to educate the general public about the powerful impact social workers have on the lives of those they serve. The podcast will also amplify the vital contributions professional social workers make in every aspect of our society every day. Hello to all our viewers and listeners. The Kelsunn-on-the-Air Social Work Podcast is proud to introduce an ongoing podcast series entitled Aging in America, The New Realities. This series will take a deeper and inclusive look at the issues facing the elderly population today. Here's what some of our research found. According to the Urban Institute, the number of Americans ages 65 and older will more than double over the next 40 years, reaching 80 million in 2040. The number of adults aged 85 and older, the group most often needing help with basic personal care, will nearly quadruple between 2020 and 2040. The National Council on Aging's report from October 2023 states that nearly 56 million Americans are 65 and older, with projections estimating that the population of older adults will grow to 94.7 million in 2060. On average, a 65-year-old can expect to live another 17 years. For most older adults, good health ensures independence, security, and productivity as they age. To show you the impact and the interest this topic generates, I'd like to share some of the analytics from a segment I did on caregiving for the elderly back in July of 2024. I found these facts very interesting. The gender of the audience for that particular episode was split 50-50 between males and females. The age demographic was also split 50-50 between the 35 to 44-year-old age group and the 60-plus age group. So in essence, the amount of people listening or watching was divided equally between the sandwich generation, meaning those individuals caring for aging parents or grandparents while at the same time caring for their own families, and those elderly individuals now needing care and assistance. This segment was our top episode of 2024 as reported by Spotify in their year-end wrap-up report. Also, according to Spotify, our podcast listeners grew by 73% in 2024. That segment outperformed all my other YouTube podcast episodes in 2024 and was played 128 more times than any other episode and was viewed 11.6 hours more than any episode. In other words, the topic really resonated with listeners and viewers. So in the coming months, stay tuned as we bring to you our ongoing podcast series entitled Aging in America, The New Realities, which will take an in-depth look at the various aspects of aging and what it means in our society. Make sure to subscribe, tune in, and download. Please be advised, all music tracks used in this production are original compositions. Thank you.
Hey, it's Scary Jones, executive producer of Elvis Duran and The Morning Show on Z100. I want to talk to you all about my friend and fellow Brooklyn College alumnus, Silas, your e-journalist, social work advocate. Silas hosts and produces the award-winning Kelsunn-on-the-Air social work podcast. My friend and fellow BCR alum is now known nationally and internationally as Silas, your e-journalist, social work advocate. His podcast, it's also listed as one of the top social work podcasts you must follow. The award-winning Kelsunn-on-the-Air social work podcast.
Hello and welcome to all our listeners and viewers. This is Silas, your e-journalism social work advocate, producer and host of the award-winning Kelsunn-on-the-Air social work podcast, available wherever you get your podcast. Our podcast is rated internationally as one of the 40 best social work podcasts you must follow. This podcast promotes, celebrates, uplifts, and highlights the social work profession. Our aim is to educate the general public about the powerful impact social workers have on the lives of those they serve. The podcast will also amplify the vital contributions professional social workers make in every aspect of our society every day. Hello, travelers. We'd like to introduce you to Hop In Bus Service, LLC, founded in 2018. Our goal is to provide people across the U.S. with world-class travel and tourism services. Our expertise allows us to offer our customers the best deals. We've built a reputation on tailoring our services to meet your needs. We specialize in motor coach buses and party buses. We offer clean vehicles and professional drivers for your next trip or occasion. Our passion is safe traveling. We're a contract carrier licensed to operate in all 48 states. We believe in providing a personal touch beyond just making your next charter bus or party bus reservation. You can book us today for your next amusement park, casino, or family reunion trip. We can handle all of your transportation needs like corporate events, weddings, or proms. We're committed to making travel easy for you. For a free quote today, call 833-774-6746. That's 833-774-6746. And remember, don't just stand there, hop in. Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Silas, your e-journalism social work advocate, host of the award-winning Kelsunn-on-the-Air social work podcast. And today we have a very special segment that's going to be part of a series that we're going to be producing throughout the coming months. The name of the series is Aging in America, the New Realities. And what the series entails is having conversations with different individuals that have different viewpoints and perspectives on the whole concept of aging in America. And today, we're going to be getting a firsthand account of caregiving by an individual who's caregiving for two family members. And so I'm going to introduce her and then let her tell you a little bit about the journey, and then we're just going to have a conversation. And so it is my distinct pleasure to introduce to some and present to others Miss Michele Woodard, and she's going to be sharing with us a little bit about the experience that she's actually going through right now as a caregiver for two family members. So, Ms. Woodard, welcome to the show. We're so grateful to have you. Please give our listeners a little background on yourself, but then just explain what your experience has been and is currently as a primary caregiver.
Thank you for inviting me, Silas. I would like to start out by saying that and just reiterating that this is a personal experience that I'm about to share. I do have a degree, a bachelor's degree in psychology, and I went on to get my master's in rehabilitation counseling. So while I do have many years of experience working in that field with a variety of people that have challenges, and also working with people that are in the aging category, and also people that are in that profession. But this is truly more my own personal experience of working with not only my mom, but another person from my extended family. So let me tell you a little bit about those relationships. So my mom recently turned 90, and she lost her husband of 30 plus years just about 3 years ago this month. And so while I noticed I was spending more time with her before he passed, I found that after her husband passed, it was more of a gradual kind of increase in my support that she needed. You know, I'm in the very early stages of that support with her. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about that. But even though I'm in the early stages, it's still really a part of my daily life. And so over time, over the past 3 years, I have become power of attorney. I've become the executor of her estate. And I began to notice that she was having a little more difficulty keeping track of her finances. Bills were getting missed. She had more challenges keeping her bills straight, just overall managing her finances. And also noticing that she was just becoming more forgetful. which was unlike her. So that was noticeable to me, as well as forgetting things that I may have told her or shared with her, or conversations that we had, if not that morning, the previous day, and so she would ask the same questions, and I would have to repeat myself. So just starting to see some of those signs of the forgetfulness, and just being able to keep her daily life organized. Things around the house. So she would start making lists of things around the house that she would need help with, that she could no longer do by herself. And I will mention that she does live in a adult community. So she doesn't have a large house. She downsized many years ago. So she's in a smaller cottage type of setting, where she does get some support outside the home, but she just needed support inside the home. And so just working with her, through all of that. And as I said, as the months have gone on, I've noticed that care, that level of care, has increased. I now track her. I did get her a cell phone because I like to track kind of, just where she is. I mean, she moves about in the community, but just to know, because there was a time when she was still driving into an area where she wasn't familiar with, and she got lost, and she called me, and she was in a panic, and I didn't know where she was. So just those kinds of levels of care that have continued to increase over time.
Now, so if I'm correct, you said that she was in the community driving. Is this recently she's driving in?
No, this was probably over a year ago. And she actually left the community, and she was in a situation where if it's short distances, and, maybe to like her community and the grocery store and back, or the community to the bank and back. So it might be a matter of a few blocks. But the one day, I don't know, she tried to get to the train station one day by herself to pick somebody up, and I don't know why. She did not tell me that she was planning on doing this. And she got lost, and she was a bit disoriented. She didn't know where she was or how to get back to where she was trying to go to. And it was a very panicked, situation for her. And again, that's something new for her, because, while she was, a year or two younger at that point, she was always been a younger person in their 80s. So even more so, I've seen that those gradual increases of level of support that she needs is very noticeable to me, because she's always been a very young, older person. And and too, I think that, we all like to, well, I do, I'm not sure I can say we all, but I think of our parents, or I think of my parents, or did, as being indestructible. It's very noticeable. The other member of my family is an extended member, which, he's a relative. He's a few months shy of 80. And his level of care, or what he needs, is very different. And also his shift to not needing any care or attention at all in his terms of daily life or medical was a more dramatic shift. To me, it was very noticeable, where we would get together often for lunches or dinners. I would help him here and there with certain things outside the home regarding landscaping. But in between two visits, like visit 1 and visit 2, I was shocked at the level of decline that he had with respect to recalling his thoughts, being able to maintain a conversation. He would just kind of, in the middle of a conversation, look off into the distance and just start staring, completely forgetting what he was talking about. It would take him a couple minutes to come back around. So just a more of a dramatic shift. And also hand tremors. He was diagnosed with early Parkinson's, so he's got hand tremors. So I do share my responsibilities with one of his brothers, but it's just more involved because he also cannot see out of one eye. So then we're talking about, driving and accompanying him to doctor appointments and medical exams, being more involved with doctors and his care. Also, things around the home as well, paying his bills, always needing help with technology, installing a new phone so we can make sure he has a phone in every room, and then setting up an emergency. He has like this very simple flip phone, but there's an emergency service attached to it, which I encouraged him to sign up for. So, and I also encouraged him to keep it on himself at all times. So if he got into a situation where he fell and he couldn't get up, and he would be able to just push that button and dispatch the EMTs, and they would call me as well. So, so the level is very different. I have seen a decline in my relative a whole lot faster than with my mom, which I said is more like gradual. So there's a kind of relationship, but I would like to add that with both of these members of my family, that pride and dignity are enormous, right? Because they both have great pride, and they really strive to hold on to every bit of independence that they possibly can. So I can only imagine how hard it is to give that up to people, even people that you love and trust. So even having conversations with them about their care, and any care that may have to happen down the road, is very touchy.
So when you talk about the pride, there's a lot of research and studies that talk about how painful it must be for the elderly person who now can no longer do the things that they used to do, and that has to be, pretty hurtful and pretty painful as well. So, what kind of things do you try to do in your daily activities with your family members to try to give them that sense of some semblance of independence? Because it must be difficult.
That's a great question. And for me, and I'll tell you why, because what I have found is I really want to separate me being a kind of a taskmaster for them versus having quality time. And what I started falling into with both relationships is that I would go visit, or be on appointments with them, and it was always very task oriented. Okay, we have this appointment, so we're going here at this time. Okay, I'm going to my mother's house, and she has a list of things that she needs help with and she needs me to do for her. So that started to not feel good for me, because I felt like I was losing the relationships that I used to have with them, where my relative and I would go to lunch, or my mom and I would go on a trip, and so I really started to realize that I wanted to build in time where I was helping them as a caregiver, but also just having time with them to sit and have lunch and have a discussion and have a chat with them. So I think building that into my caregiving role really helped with building that trust, figure out how ways to kind of weave in those discussions about, well, maybe with my relative, maybe at some point we can go and see these 2 assisted living programs that, seem to be a good fit for you. And that has been more effective than me trying to have those conversations while driving to a doctor appointment or the bills that need to get paid. So that's kind of how I am building more on that platform of trust and, helping them maintain their dignity.
So now, on any given day, are you interacting with both family members during the course of the same day? And if so, what is a typical day like from a caregiver role? If you're working with both of them in the same day, how do you manage that?
It does get overwhelming. And I say this in a very loving way, When I am having to spend more time on any given day with my relative from my extended family, my mother may feel not neglected, but where are you? Like I'm not as present for her in that moment
Mm,
or on that particular day. But there have been those days. There have been those days where I am running to a few different doctors and trying to get paperwork together and having to actually accompany my relative to a doctor appointment. And there's a little bit more of a distance from physical location. So just the drive back and forth and going from point A to point B to C and then back to A is more time consuming because it can truly take up a full day. But I call my mother every morning. One of the first things I do when I wake up is call when I know that she's up, just to check in. And so I do that check in. I let her know what my day looks like. So I want to manage expectations with her. Um, and I do that more with her than I do with my relative, where it's not a daily call because it's a shared responsibility, but definitely checking in a few times a week. So a typical day is different every day, depending on what the
mm,
need is. One thing I did find as well that was a bit overwhelming for me at first until I figured out a way to better handle it on my end was I would get a phone call, and it could be from either relative, and there was always a sense of urgency. And so for me, I took that urgency on because how it was being communicated to me is like, I'm having this problem or I need this and I need it right now. And so I could be in the middle of my own day and taking care of some of my own things that I need to take care of and feeling that sense of urgency or maybe that anxiety in me starts to rise. Like, how am I going to finish what I'm doing and then get to this and attend to this so I can fix this right away? So, what I have really learned just through listening to friends, listening to other people that have been caregivers is just do an assessment. Everything is not urgent. Everything doesn't have to be solved or fixed right away. And so I've gotten better at just trying to figure out, like, all right, how do I do this assessment? Is it truly an emergency? Does it have to be attended to right away? And that I'm getting better at that. It's a work in progress, but it has absolutely helped me to better manage my emotions around it, and then to kind of manage my time and figure out when I can get to whatever their need is, whether it be immediately or tomorrow or some point in the future.
So a lot of what you just described sounds like some of the more challenging aspects of your caregiver role. Um, Tell our audience a little bit about some of what you find the most rewarding in your role as a primary caregiver.
So what I find most rewarding is I truly am sincere in saying this is that these are two people that have always been a big support to me in my life. Um, Obviously, my mother, and then this relative who I've always been close to, and has always been there for me in so many ways. I now not only do I get to give that support back, but I do feel honored that in both situations I was asked to be there for them because I do think it takes a enormous amount of trust in the person that you are asking not only to be your caregiver, but to also, help with their financial affairs and help with their estate planning and whatever it is that they need to get done. It's such an intimate topics that you're discussing with these people who are adults that have never shared that level of relationship with me growing up because I've always been the younger one. I've been the child. I've been the younger relative by a lot of years. So to be asked to be in that role, while it's can be overwhelming and there's a lot of emotions that go with being in that role, to me, I feel like it's an honor and I feel that I'm happy and I feel honored that they would trust me, especially for me to be around seeing them at their most vulnerable moments in life.
Now, you mentioned two terms, and I'm sure a lot of our audience members who are in the primary caregiver role, in caregiver roles, are familiar with. I just want you to give us, our audience, a little more background on executor of an estate and power of attorney. So some of that seems like it intertwines or cross sections, and some of it seems like it could be two separate and distinct things. So what types of responsibilities fall with each of those?
So, power of attorney basically allows me to act on my mother's behalf now while she's living. So, what that means is, and it's to the extent that she will feel comfortable adding me to all of her bank accounts, any investments that she has, um, the deed to a home that she owns that we have other relatives living in. So essentially, she has added me to every single account that she has in her name, including credit card accounts. And so, in the event that tomorrow something happens where she cannot continue to maintain any of that, I can step right in without any other, like just providing the power of attorney document that is a legal document signed by witnesses, our attorney, my mother, and I. So it allows me to continue um, to manage all of her personal affairs while she's still living. And now being named executor of the estate, that is helping her to prepare for all of and putting in place all of those key pieces that will be important after she's gone. So after she passes, making sure that her will is up to date, making sure that she has a living will, knowing what her wishes are if she becomes incapacitated on life support, which is a really important document to have. I've learned over the years. And just so all those pieces, and here's another topic that's really difficult to approach. It has to be the right time, and it could be one of those times to where we're just having lunch versus me being in my task role. What do you want your funeral services to look like? Do you want a mass? Do you want, and it's those things that are really hard for us to talk about with people that are, are growing older and getting to an age where it's a reality. Things like, do you want to be cremated or buried? Do you want, what would you like your story to be in your obituary? Because I want to make sure that whatever she wants to be the legacy that is shared with the public, that it's reflected the way that she wishes. So they're very two different kind of roles. And right now I am the power of attorney and the executor of my mother's estate, but co-executor of my other relative's estate. But I don't yet have power of attorney at this point.
Now, talk a little bit about the emotional, mental journey. What is that like?
That's the hardest piece on so many levels. And for me, it's on so many different levels. And I'll start out by saying, when I was thinking about retirement a few years ago, I had grand plans. And my plan was I was going to retire and do things I've never done before. I've got to see some national parks, travel the country, go to warm places in the Caribbean where I can sit on the beach and enjoy my life, right? So it was a grand plan, but nowhere in that universe or in that plan did I ever think or imagine myself being a caretaker. And so I retired. I probably had a very short runway where I didn't have to be in that role, but it just kind of got sprung on me. And I said, oh, okay, this was not in my plan. So I hear a lot of people talk about resentment and, not wanting to be in that role. But I think what I had to do quickly, and was helpful for me is I had to reset my expectations very quickly and say, okay, so there's a huge amount of emotions that go with that. I mean, anxious, impatient, selfishness, very much so. But the resentment, I struggled with that. And I'll tell you why. It's a strong word for me. And it almost seems contradictory that you could resent somebody who you love, but also needs you, not just because of life. It's just because of something out of their control. So I really kind of wrestled with that. And that's where I tried to, and I know resentment, I looked it up. I've looked up definitions of resentment and what it truly means. And I think it's a little bit stronger than we use it in our everyday lives. So I think it's just, for me, it's now probably a culmination of, anger and people feeling more selfish because they want to live their life without having this ball and chain. And, anxiety and anger, all those emotions that build up. For me, I don't want to say that I feel resentful or angry. I think where I might have borderlined on those emotions where I felt like I was doing it by myself. I was doing it all. And you may know, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but the families that I've seen, it always seems like there's that one person in the family that just is appointed, as the caregiver or steps up because they're the qualified person in the family to do it. And I've seen that time and time again. I just happen to be that person in my immediate family. And so I really had to figure out how to do something about that because I didn't want it to impact my relationships with my immediate family. But part of that was me. Part of that was me trying to figure out how to ask for help, maybe how to delegate some of the tasks that I was being asked to do, or, the role that I was playing. And so, that was all part of the whole emotional journey. And of course, I'm sure many people could relate to this, is the guilt for me came in to play with my impatience. My mom she is hard of hearing. Now with her not remembering some things, I got frustrated. And I was not always the most patient, and I'm still not, but I know I need to work on that. So on a day where she might ask me to repeat myself for the third time, and it's something I've already told her, or we've talked about, or she can't hear me, sometimes I snap. And I'd say that in the nicest way, but I might snap back at her a little bit like, well, we already talked about this, or I told you, and I'm human and it happens. And so I walk away and I was like, oh, then the guilt comes in. So that's where my guilt comes in. And then I just say, okay, next time I'm going to count to 10 before I, and just try to stay as patient as possible and keep saying to myself, she can't hear that well. She is now having memory issues. So I have to remember that, and just other things that, that kind of go with that. And so, I try to process each time something happens or I feel that guilt and process. I'm like, okay, what do I need to do to adjust it? Because I don't want to carry this guilt around. So I need to make some changes myself. So there's a lot of emotions up and down. Some days are better than others on both sides. It just depends on the day, but we're all human. I think we all love each other, so we tend to forgive each other and just move on to the next day. But it's a lot. And I would say, I don't want to downplay the anxiety, because being responsible for people and people that you love it's a big deal.
Yeah,
It's a very big deal. And a lot comes with it.
So, what kind of advice, Michele, would you give someone just starting?
I really came up with like 3 overall areas or topics that I think are important, and I did write them down because I don't want to miss anything, and I think for me they were important, but maybe something that I say will be helpful to somebody else. The first one is denial. Like, watch out for denial, because when you're so close to a situation every day, it's really hard to see what's happening, unless somebody else can point it out to you, or unless you can take some steps back. But with that, I was absolutely in denial with my mother. She's fine. She's fine. Nope. Everything's okay. And I think that is really harmful, because you can, like, I could have missed something. I could have missed something critical to her care. I could have miscategorized or misjudged something related to, can she still be alone at night? What if she gets up and she falls? Like, does she really need to have a walker? So again, I go back to me always wanting to think my parents are indestructible and they'll be around forever. They're always, we think of our parents as the big, strong people in our lives, and now they're not so much. So I would just say, just keep that in mind, that denial piece, and is it there? Do you think it might be getting in the way of you being a good caregiver, or getting the person that you love what they really need? The second one was, decide if you want to be the caregiver. That's a huge one, because now some people may not have that freedom, but if you have the freedom to decide, just do a gut check. Are you the right person? Do you want to do it without too much anxiety and guilt and resentment? Again, I use that word loosely, but it's really something, it's okay to ask yourself that. Like, are you the right person? And if you're not, it's okay, but you can be in a supporting role and still contribute. And then the third one was, do some research. So there's so many resources out there, but even I find myself researching now when my mother or my relative have been diagnosed with something new, right online, trying to find out, what is it? What are the symptoms? What's the prognosis? How does it unfold over the years? And what kind of support will somebody need? Like, one area I was really not familiar with was memory care. And I know memory care is a whole another kind of ball of wax. Like, even looking for assisted living programs, some have memory care support and some don't. So there's a lot of information that is helpful to the caregiver role that you can find online. Also, just local community resources. But I really encourage people to do their research, talk to people that have been caregivers or going through it now, and just arm yourself with as much knowledge as possible to help you be the best caregiver that you can be for your loved ones. But I also feel, for me, the more knowledge I have, the less anxious I feel.
Now, you mentioned something. You said some assisted living facilities, they have. You said you call it memory care.
Memory care.
So, what does that consist of? Enlighten our audience.
So, for instance, there is a nursing home in this area, and so there's two different levels. So I've also learned that. So assisted living is not quite at the nursing home level. So if a person is ready to sell their home, they can, and still needs, but needs more a supportive environment, they can go into an assisted living level of care. But if they have dementia, early dementia, or Alzheimer's, they can find an assisted living program that has a memory care program, which is a higher level of support. And that might mean something simple as the staffing ratios might be higher. They might need to not only hand out medication to the people that live there in their own apartments, but actually give them and stay and make sure they take the medication, because they might forget they have to take it, or they might forget how to take it. Now, on the nursing level of care that has a memory care unit, it might be locked, whereas other parts of the nursing home might not be. But because they can't have people going outside and just wandering and away from the apartment or the facility, so there are some other special levels of care that somebody with memory loss need. And so it's really important to kind of look at those different living situations, and levels of care to make sure that if somebody does have early dementia or Alzheimer's, that they would need a facility that has the memory care level of medical treatment that they need.
Mhm. And now, there's a distinct difference between what is termed an assisted living facility versus a skilled nursing facility. Can you nuance that a little bit for our audience?
Sure, absolutely. So an assisted living care would look more like a condominium where it's one big building, but within that building, people have their own apartments, but it's self-contained. So what I've seen is people that have had to sell their homes, they take a portion of their belongings from their home that they may have lived in for years, and they're able to move it into a small apartment. Most of the time, it's a studio apartment. I have seen assisted living where they provide a one bedroom, so it feels more like a townhouse. But within that building, all their meals, they get all their meals. So they'll get 3 meals a day. There's an activities director that they provide activities throughout the day. And they really truly encourage people to participate. People don't have to. You can still drive and live in assisted living. You do have to be able to take your own medication. Now, it can be sorted out and handed to a person, but a person has to be completely independent unless there's a memory care portion to that program. So basically, they can still live independently for the most part. They don't need anybody, showering them, dressing them. They're not bedridden. Some people can still drive. They can still go out with their families and go to lunch. They can go on a vacation and come back. So it's really being in their own apartment, but with this whole support system in the same building that's all inclusive, and they have access to all of it. Now, a skilled nursing home is on a completely different level. And so a skilled nursing home, a person from assisted living would probably next transition to a skilled nursing home at the next level where they can no longer take care of themselves at all. They might be in full dementia where they wander and they have to be watched at all times. People that can't take their medication, they could be bedridden. Some are on tubes that have to be medically cared for. So that's a whole nother level that you would find more at a skilled nursing home.
Okay. Well, you've certainly been providing quite a bit of enlightening and useful information. So you and I have spoken, and there's a lot of information out there. And as we get ready to wrap this up, to talk to the audience about the importance of self-care.
So it's the utmost importance. And I say that because as a caregiver, if I'm not good, nobody else is going to be good. So on the flip side of that, it's the hardest thing to do is to take care of yourself while you're taking care of other people. Because for me, it's similar to raising children. They're the center of the universe. They come first. Their needs come first. So self-care is extremely important, and it's one of the hardest things to accomplish. I think, as I said, learning how to delegate and not always have to be the superhero is enormous. Learning how to say no. And again, that's huge. That was a big deal for me. And it kind of goes back to every time I would get a phone call from anybody related to, or from my mother or my relative, I would be right there. I wouldn't even think twice about it. But again, so it's like, okay, let me take a step back and learn how to say no. And when I say that, meaning if I assess that it's not urgent, no, it can wait and we'll do it tomorrow, or give a date, or I can't do it right now, so I'm going to pull in a family member to help. And that's a big lesson. Now, fortunately, I have family members that are willing to help whenever asked. If people don't, build a network. It's so important to build a network of friends, colleagues that you may know that are going through the same, situation with their family members and loved ones. And then just resources in the community. I have found, which was a little surprising to me, Al-Anon. And I had a friend of mine who cared for her mom, and her mom was bedridden for probably the last 2 or 3 years. And she found Al-Anon, and Al-Anon has slowly gotten their own model, separate from AA, which is Alcoholics Anonymous, and she found it to be really, really helpful. And she said the model that Al-Anon now has set up is more for how to take care of yourself and not, basically taking care of yourself and keeping your world centered on yourself to stay healthy. So, and within that, she found a lot of friends there too, people that she can talk to, people that she learned from, that she could lean on, that have gone through the same types of, caregiving. The other one is a local community hospice. Again, people might think, oh, it's only for grief counseling, but there's a lot of resources in the community that as a caregiver that you can tap into to help with self-care. Then there's those fun things. Get your gym time in, try to get a spa day, meditate, whatever it is that fills you with joy, or if it makes you feel at peace. And it's different for everybody, but take the time to think about that. I know I usually, when I am ready to sleep, that's when my mind starts working and gearing up. So I take notes if something pops in my mind, or it's my time to think because now it's downtime. I'll try to think, what does give me joy? What does give me peace? And how do I want to spend those few minutes that I have, or an hour a day, or 2 hours a day that I have, to take care of myself?
And it's very, very important, that self-care piece. And so when we wrap this up, I'm going to say to my viewers and listeners, I've been having a very enlightening conversation with Ms. Michele Woodard, and she's given us a personal, firsthand view of her journey as a primary caregiver, not for just one, but for two individuals in her family. Some of the joys and some of the challenges, and the reality of it. And as we all know, the population is getting grayer and older. The research out there states that eventually there will be more people 55 and older in the United States than 45 and younger. And so this is the new reality that we're looking at. And caregiving is going to be something that everybody's going to have to deal with, either on one side being the person cared for, or the other side being the one that's giving the care. So on that note, we're going to wrap it up for the Kelsunn-on-the-Air Social Work Podcast. I want to thank our guest, Ms. Michele Woodard. Thank you so much for gracing the show with your presence. Thank
you, Silas. It was a pleasure being here with you and having this discussion today. I appreciate you.
Once again, this is Silas, your e-journalism social work advocate, producer, and host of the show. You've been listening to the award-winning Kelsunn-on-the-Air Social Work Podcast. This and all other episodes are available on our Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, and iHeart audio podcast platforms, among others. The podcast is also available on our Spotify and YouTube video podcast platforms. Go to any search engine and type in Kelsunn-on-the-Air in the search window to hear this show in its entirety. Please make sure to click subscribe to support our podcast. And don't forget to like, comment, download, and share. To reach us for more information, email us at info@kelsunn.org. That's info@kelsunn.org. Or to suggest future topics, log into www.kelsunn.org. That's www.kelsunn.org, and fill out the Share a Topic form on our homepage. Thank you for tuning in. This has been a Kelsunn Communications production.